The Alabama Crimson Tide are having a phenomenal day because not only has it been announced that Henry To'oTo'o has been graded as the #1 transfer per 24/7 Sports, but also the Crimson Tide are finding out that they are in contention for much more 5-star prospects than we had previously talked about, including a 5-star defensive back who is currently committed elsewhere that has just announced that he will be taking an official to the Crimson Tide this summer, and we have got to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you agree that Henry To'oTo'o was the #1 transfer this year? And let me know what you're thinking there. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, that way you don't miss any of my uploads because I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like, comment down below. Those interactions are huge for content creators such as myself. But with all that being said and out the way, let's first talk about Henry To'oTo'o being ranked as the #1 transfer in the transfer portal per 24/7 Sports. Number 2 coming in was Eric Gray, and I think that there were some very interesting things about this list. First and foremost, there were 3 players from Tennessee on this list, and Eric Gray, Wanye Morris, and Henry To'oTo'o, so you don't want to be a Vols fan looking at this list because it's nothing but pain. But a team that really surprised me in how much they've lost as well has been Clemson, losing 5-star running back DeMarcus Bowman and then Mike Jones Jr. to the transfer portal to LSU, DeMarcus Bowman going to Florida. That right there is going to be hard to replicate and hard to replace. So right then and there, very interesting. But I do agree that Henry To'oTo'o was the #1 player to get out of the transfer portal. It's something we talked about here on this channel, and we'd be following different players or different transfer portal selections, such as Jamison Williams. I talked about how all of the eyes in the transfer portal world were on Henry To'oTo'o and what that situation was going to do. Jamison Williams also ranked on this list at number 21. I think a debate could be had as to whether or not that's too low, considering the caliber athlete he is, where he's going in, and what Alabama does with receivers. However, that's a different argument for a different time. I think that it's a very real argument that he was a little low on this list, but all the more reason for him to go out this season and prove how talented he is. But if we focus on Henry To'oTo'o, to me it's a no-brainer because even though Eric Gray was the best offensive player to transfer from Tennessee, Henry To'oTo'o was probably the best player on that Tennessee team, period. Being a freshman All-American, being a very highly rated prospect coming out of high school, and only continuing that high heralded ability he had going into college, his freshman and sophomore year in the SEC, putting up mind-numbing stats, a very talented player, someone who at the Alabama Crimson Tide looks to bump up his draft stock even more. This is a guy who looks to be a possible first-round linebacker, and if everything goes right under the tutelage of Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide, this could be a first-round lock. So I do agree that this is the best transfer in the portal. But now let's talk about Alabama and them getting even more very talented prospects to come and visit this summer. And since we last talked, we need to talk about how A.J. Harris, the 5-star corner out of Alabama, Bryce Anderson, the 4-star safety, very talented safety who could be on the rise this year. He's a name to watch. He is going to be taking an official to Alabama as well. Peter Woods, Anthony Hill, and James Smith all have announced that they are also set to take visits. Peter Woods, Anthony Hill, James Smith, all 5-stars in the class of 2023. But the player we talked about and hinted at the beginning of this video, the 5-star defensive back committed elsewhere that has announced that he will be visiting the Alabama Crimson Tide, is none other than Damani Jackson, someone we talked about on this channel not too long ago, positing the question of could the Alabama Crimson Tide flip Damani Jackson from USC? Him being at Mater Dei, having Bryce Young, currently the quarterback at Alabama, coming from Mater Dei, that kind of gives the Tide an end. It will be very hard to uproot him from USC. USC does great work at recruiting out of Mater Dei. Alabama can recruit out of anywhere, but the pitch is very, very hard to turn down if you are a DB getting pitched to by Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide, especially if you just looked at the last draft and the draft capital Alabama and Nick Saban puts out every given year. The Alabama Crimson Tide getting Damani Jackson on campus for an official visit, in my opinion, is a big deal because this is the kind of thing that Tide fans were looking for heading into the summer. This is kind of the writing on the wall when I look at this and the situation in totality, in a larger scope than just Damani Jackson, meaning when I look at Damani Jackson, the very talented 5-star DB committed elsewhere, coming to take an official visit to Alabama, and then I look at all of the talented prospects who are wanting to come to Tuscaloosa to visit, even some of them still needing to camp, but wanting to get out there, wanting to come camp just so they can get that official hard offer from the University of Alabama. That makes you feel great if you are an Alabama fan as to what this class is going to be looking like mid-summer or towards the end of summer, because I think this class is set for a massive boom, just like last year's class, and I think that the writing is in the cards when we look at all the very talented visitors coming to visit the capstone this year, whether it's Denver Harris, Walter Nolan, Ty Simpson coming multiple times to be able to recruit those that are going to be on the visits with him is a big deal, something we talked about Ty Simpson recruiting players around him in the Ty Simpson video a few days ago. But then when you look at the list of visitors, you notice his name is on there like 8 times, which you love to see because he is adamant about getting dudes on campus. He is adamant about getting dudes a part of this class, and I love to see it. I absolutely love it. Love that he's going to be going there. But because of that, because of all the dudes who still need to camp that are so interested, and because of all the names that we already have are all going to be at Alabama, I think it's creating the perfect storm for the Crimson Tide to pick up multiple commitments after these summer visitation periods. In the end of June, towards the beginning of the July, I think we are going to be seeing a lot of dominoes fall for the Crimson Tide. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you think about Henry To'oTo'o being announced as the #1 transfer acquisition per the transfer portal heading to Alabama. The former freshman All-American looks to try and win the job over Moody, and then he and Harris are going to be a phenomenal tandem, if that is the tandem. And then I'm interested, let me know what you think about Damani Jackson, the incredibly talented 5-star defensive back currently committed to USC, announcing that he will be taking an official visit to Alabama. Let me know what you think about that. That's it. See ya.